All right, good evening, Bulldog fans. Welcome to another episode of the Black Dog Sports Podcast. And our special guest tonight on From the Dog's Mouth will be Edward Smith. Yes, that Edward Smith from Mississippi State, a player for our Bulldog from 1997 to 1998. If you remember, in 1998, we had a guy wearing number 2 that was terrorizing offenses. That's that guy. So I grew up watching him play for Mississippi State, and to have him on is a tremendous honor. What's going on, Mr. Smith? How you doing tonight?
Oh man, not too much, man. I'm excited to be on this call with you guys. You know,
Okay.
feel like catching up a
So
little bit.
first, oh yeah. So first, my name is Derek Thomas. I'm a diehard Bulldog fan. I did not go to Mississippi State. And we have on Jeremiah Short. He is a graduate of Mississippi State. That's him there in his True Maroon shirt. And we have
Hey, what's
Ricardo
up?
Suggs. Ricardo, I don't think he went to Mississippi State either, did he? He just a fan like me.
No.
No, I didn't go.
So we got two fans and a graduate. So you know, now a lot of younger Bulldogs may not remember you, but I do. Ricardo does. So we know what you did for Mississippi. So we're gonna be quiet and let you talk. So first off, talk to us about what made you choose to come to Mississippi State, and where did you go before you went to Mississippi State?
Man, I'm originally from South Carolina. That's where my roots are. I left South Carolina back in South Carolina back in '93. Moved out to San Diego, California, with my brother, and just absolutely fell in love with San Diego. I thought that was going to be the last place I would be living, in this country. Up until I started playing football and graduated, went to community college and all that good stuff. So that was what led me there. My brother lived out there. He was in the Navy for a while and ended up staying there some years afterwards. And just absolutely loved the place. Coming from the South, growing up here, it's what took place in the South. With all the racism and things like that. Not saying that there was racism in San Diego, California, but it was way different. Everybody
Right.
received you a lot differently and all that good stuff. And I made a lot of friends when I first got there. And, I went out there with the intention to live out there, start school, and join the football team right away. That group of guys, they accept me right away. Took me in as if I grew up there. And that was a great feeling to be in and welcome to. So, and there it is. I actually, the same Hillis High School is the high school that I went to when I first got there. Same school Reggie Bush and Alex Smith went to and graduated from. Reggie Smith won the Heisman, and Alex Smith was and Reggie Bush was up for the Heisman in the same year. So there's a lot of roots going on at that school that I graduated from.
All right. So let's talk about your time in JUCO and what led you to choose Mississippi State.
Well, I went to community college in San Diego, California. My first taste of how, football after high school, entry level into college and all that good stuff. Going into Southwestern Community College where I went to school, the first year I went there, it was under a conference where, everybody was open for everything. I could have received all kind of honors and all that good stuff. My second year, they went, kind of like a school like Notre Dame was, where it was an independent school. They didn't have to give out the honors. From the first time I stepped on the football field there in Southwestern, I could have gone All-American my freshman year. I could have went All-American my sophomore year, but since they were independent, they didn't give those kind of honors out at the time. So, I had a great playing career there. The coaches came to my graduation, talked to me, and pretty much pulled me in. They had, a great staff of football coaches that came in and coached me along the way. So, a lot of great times.
Okay, and your recruitment to Mississippi State, what made you decide to leave California to come back to the South and start
Well,
there?
like I said, like I said to you in the beginning, when I first moved to California, that was like the place I was going to be. My freshman year, my thinking was, I was going to go and choose a school out on the West Coast somewhere and play football out West somewhere. I didn't exactly know. As I matured a little bit more and started thinking, I'm from the South. And, my coaches took the initiative to go send my film out to schools all over the country. And when they did that, and I started getting, letters and coaches telling me about schools like South Carolina, Tennessee, Auburn, down in the South, which I didn't know a lot about other than South Carolina at the time. And that's when it started opening up, with my family being in South Carolina. The whole time I was in South Carolina, I was never able to see my family, come visit me because of the distance and all that good stuff. So I decided not to be selfish and choose a school in the South somewhere, where my family was able to come see me a lot more to watch games and things other than just watching on TV. They were able to come see me play in person. So that was a great feeling and something great that I had to, be able to share with my family.
So just kind of hearing a little bit, just hear you talk as far as coming to Mississippi State, it wasn't all like a pure football move. So were there any pure football reasons for coming to Mississippi State, or was it just purely just so your family can come see you play?
Well, no, it wasn't all about that. As you play football, you kind of learn a little bit more about the conferences. I think earlier in the year, my sophomore year, before the season started, and as the season went on, I started to watch more and more because our games were more on Thursday nights and things, where we played. So I was able to get up on like Saturday mornings and watch games before, all the big games come on. So what really got my gears to turning and getting back to the South is, going on TV and watching schools like Grambling and Southern play, seeing the battle of the bands, something I'd never gotten to really see when I played football in San Diego, California, because it was all regional. They put football according to where you were. So we had, ESPN will come on like, certain channels and play the black football teams. And, that was an opportunity for me to get back and start to feel, what was going on in the South and getting back and being able to, and understanding the different levels and levels of football. So not just my family, but understanding the level of the conferences, like the SEC being the dominant conference in all of football. Out in at the time it was a white conference out in San Diego, California. They had the Pac-12, all those teams. I was being heavily recruited by teams out on the West Coast and in the West and all that good stuff. I started getting calls from letters in the mail from Mississippi State, Kentucky, the Tennessees, and all this. And I went and I started doing a little bit more research. And then we had a coach at Brett Shufelt, who was a grad assistant at the time. He started calling me in the springtime, and from that day, I swear I talked to this guy every single day, all the way up past when I signed with Mississippi State. He called me every single day. It was a relationship that was built, through talking to Brett Shufelt, and not just the decision to come on something where I just decided, okay, I'm choosing Mississippi State over all these other schools. It wasn't like that. I went on 2 recruiting trips before I made a decision to come to Mississippi State, with Mississippi State being my second one. Mind you, I had 5 trips that I could have taken at that time. And after I went to Mississippi State, I made a verbal commitment to Mississippi State, Jackie Sherrill at the time, and told him, hey, I'm coming to Mississippi State. After that, I go back home, and I had no more contacts with any other schools because I knew at the time that all it was going to be was just a bunch of brainwashing and, people having you trying to change your mind on things like that. When I chose Mississippi State, I was dead set on Mississippi State.
All right. So, like, I'm going to say schematically, but what is, like, it seems like you're sold on Mississippi State just from listening you talk about the relationship that you built with some of the people that were there. At the time when Jolie Dunn was there, they were running the dog defense. Did anything about that truly intrigue you? Because it was a very aggressive defense, probably one that many Mississippi State fans remember fondly.
My experience with walking into that defense that walked into with Jackie Sherrill is kind of like the same experience that Dak Prescott had leaving Mississippi State, walking into that offense with the Dallas Cowboys. It was perfect for what I was doing out in San Diego, California.
Mm-hmm.
Quick story behind Mississippi State, Jolie Dunn looking at the film. Jolie Dunn did not want to look at the tape from on me coming from San Diego, California. Brett Shufelt went in, I don't know how many times he told me, he went into the office to beg Coach Dunn to finally look at this film. And one day he finally looked at it, and the defense that he was running and what we were running out in San Diego, California was almost perfect for what he was doing with his dog safeties at Mississippi State. You guys don't know, when I was first recruited at Mississippi State, I was recruited as a DB. And was eventually moved over. Right. So eventually I was moved over. I started out with the DBs. I was covering receivers in practice and all these good things. I think I played my first game as a dog safety against Georgia back in '97.
I don't mean to cut you off, but for context, how big were you at that time?
At that time, I was like a 215, a true strong safety type size, 215 pounds. Okay. And then go ahead.
No, I was saying, because I just want to kind of add that for context so people kind of understand, because you
have
pretty good defense.
I can't see the if I saw play, I can't see being no safety.
Right. Well, the thing behind that was we had Jim Thompson, who's the linebacker coach at Mississippi State, was getting word. I spoke to him a few times on the phone, and they were saying they were going to bring me in as a linebacker. So in the off season, for me, I started going to gain weight to become a linebacker. So that was what was going on in my mind when I was at making that transition from JUCO to Mississippi State at the time. So when I go out and I gain this weight, so I go in and I put the worst kind of weight on. And I got to Mississippi State. You coming from a climate where you're on the West Coast and the air is thin as you don't know what. And two, the dead middle of Mississippi, you're going out and trying to practice in July and August. It's like somebody had cotton stuck up my nose where I couldn't even breathe. So it was a hardest transition, getting my body to acclimate, into the different regions and making that adjustment. But once I got that adjustment, man, it was just over with from there. It was like I was already built for everything, coming from the West Coast to Mississippi State, other than, all the humidity that I had to get used to at the time. So it was a perfect fit for me.
All right, so you get to Mississippi State, you're a junior. You didn't read, you were a true junior that year, right?
Right.
Okay, so let's talk about your acclimation. Go ahead.
Yeah. Here's the thing. Another thing you guys didn't know about me. When I first came to Mississippi State, everybody wants to come on the field and they want to come to a school and get on that field and play because they know they can play. The one thing I didn't want to get caught up in is that whole thing is being on a team where, you just get on the sideline or whatever and you just go and people just forget about you. I always knew I could play. So when I got to Mississippi State, my first year, it hit me the hardest because at that time, me making that transition from safety to DN behind Greg Favors. At first, I was behind Eric Brown, and then moving over to behind Greg Favors. It wasn't like that. I didn't get a lot of real play until the last 3 games of the season in '97. Well, most of my time on '97 was spent on playing special teams, which I was a real good special team player at the same time. So I was in there, I blocked punts and all that. I was going down, making tackles. I knocked Fernando Bryant out back with Alabama, back when he was.
I wish I could have found that clip. That would have been awesome to see.
Those are games where I wanted to get out. So I created an attitude where I was so mad because I wasn't on the field playing. So in the off season of '97, going into '98, in '98. I went back home for that summer. And I actually went back. San Diego State was the first school that offered me a scholarship. And before I went to Mississippi State. Well, I went back and talked to Ted Turner, who was the head coach at San Diego State at the time. And I told him, hey, I want to come back and, I want to play my last year at San Diego State. And they were open to it, but they couldn't put me on the scholarship at the time. So I went back, man, and I was on the airplane flying back, and that was the closest I can get to God at that time up in the sky. And I was like looking out the window, and I prayed, and I was like, hey, God, I'm putting this all in your hands. I mean, this is what you got for me. This is what I'm gonna do. Wherever you lead me, do what I'm gonna finish up doing at Mississippi State. Hey, I'm leaving it in your hands. And I got off that plane, and one day, Brett Shufelt told me, you need to go in and speak with Coach Dunn in the off season whenever you can. So one day I went in and talked to him in that summer after I got back from San Diego, California. And I basically went in. At that day, he was sitting there breaking down film, which is what Jolie Dunn did all the time, break down film. So he stopped the film. He came, shook my hand, and we talked for a while. He had pictures up on the wall, and and he showed me about the pictures on the wall, told me about the pictures on the wall and all this good stuff, and sat me down. He asked me again, "Hey, where you want to play at this year?" I was like, "Same place I left off at last year, Coach, right behind Greg Favors leaving." So that's where we left it in the conversation. So we go back. Spring start, summer. Two days start up at the time, and we go in the training room. After we break out of the big meeting, then we break down into the defensive meeting, and then we break off into the position meeting. And up on the board in the position room, Coach Dunn had the names up on the board of the depth chart, and my name was number 1 behind where Greg Favors were. And in my mind, instantly, I was like, hey, I don't know, because Coach Jolie Dunn had just said, hey, these names on this board right now, we had to put people in place right now, and these names are just there, so they can change at any time. Well, in my mind, I was like, hey, I don't know about these guys, but my name's in this number 1 spot. That's where my name's going to stay in this number 1 spot.
Amen.
And I just left it at that. I didn't have to speak out loud about it or anything. I just went to work on that field day in, day out, that did what I needed to do. And the first game came around against Vanderbilt, went out there, and I smashed them. All SEC player of the week the first week I played. It was over with from there. So, and then mind you, I was starting on defense, and they had me in every position on the special teams. I was on every one of them. So the next day I come back in on that Sunday. All the coaches come up taking me, hey, Ed Smith, you off this team. You're not on this team anymore. You're just playing defense. I was like, hey, coach, just leave me on the punt team. And that's where he left me at, because Jackie Sherrill's punt team for the last, I don't know how many years, were like ranked up in the nation. Jeff Walker was the punter, obviously. So, and that's why I said, hey, don't take me off the punt team. So they came at me, man. You off this team, you off this team. And that was just the week before the Dog Pound Rock was created. Kinsaki Jones came out with the Dog Pound Rock. So
Kinsaki is the founder of the Dog Pound Rock.
Oh, yeah. So I wasn't able to make history with the Dog Pound Rock. So there you go.
So,
go ahead, Jeremiah.
Now I was going to ask, so it seems like at that time, like before you, I guess, got that opportunity to be the number 1 guy, it seems like maybe, I don't know if you thought maybe the coaches looked at you kind of like an afterthought almost. What do you think happened in that first year where it kind of seems like that transition from JUCO to Mississippi State, it got you playing 3 different positions almost? Like, what happened with that transition from JUCO to Mississippi State?
A lot of times it takes for somebody to come and for reality to set in again, because I'm a believer in faith. Whatever happens is supposed to happen. It happens for a reason. And my whole thought pattern behind all of that is, if they didn't sit me down that first year when I went in there, who knows what would have happened. I've heard Coach Sherrill said, I don't know how many times, I wish Coach Sherrill used to call me number 2. He never called me by Ed Smith or anything like that. He knew who I was, but he always called me number 2. He was like, and he'll talk to the media, I wish I sat number 2 down and redshirted him the first year he came in. Because they didn't know. I used to hear all the time when Coach Smith was like, we don't know where we want to play Ed Smith at. We just don't know what fit he's going to be in the defense. And I went out and I prepared myself in that offseason. I prepared myself in two-a-days. There was no holding me back at that point. This is my opportunity right here. I can't let anybody come in. I'm going to still play as a team player. But, up until that season start, we're all in competition together. Somebody's trying to take my position. Until I solidify what I'm doing on that football field, I can't give up. I can't I can't slack up or just, I got to always be on my game 100% of the time.
So that 98 season, like I said, you started out with Vanderbilt. You already talked about your acclimation to the SEC because you almost left. You were getting ready to go back to California, but you came back in. You took your spot, and that Vanderbilt game from the film that I saw, I mean, you were like a madman on that football field. So is that the attitude you took into every game?
That's the attitude I took into every game. And the good thing, and I've owned sports training business in the past, where one thing you cannot do, and I see a lot of parents do it. They try to train their own kids and force them to play as if they were a little bit good in high school. They want their kids to pick up from where they were left off so they can go and fly from that point. What I've learned from watching people, you cannot go in and coach somebody and coach them to be that person that you are. And that's one thing I had to pull back on when I trained kids in the past. Now, when I go into a situation, I know what I'm going in for, because in my mind, I'm sitting here, not just because I'm sitting there practicing on the field. Now you got to take that practice to the training, the meeting room, so you can break down film and all that good stuff. Not from the meeting room. Now I'm going back to my dorm room to sit there and prepare mentally what I'm going to do in the football game. I used to think about things in games that I've never done before, by going in and having 3-site games in one game, or going in and having 16 tackles in one game, or going in and causing fumbles and winning ball games for my football team. These are things I've never done in high school. These are things I've never done in JUCO. But I come to Mississippi State, man, and man, I'm just blowing it up, man. I mean, I had 3-site games in 98. And all of them in the SEC. And all of these games that we played in with the 3 sites in were big time for us. One, it was big time for me mentally. One, because I'm from South Carolina. The first 3-site game I had was in South Carolina. Guess where my family was? 1 hour away from there, where I had family and friends that I grew up with that came to watch me play. That was a huge game for me. So I couldn't sit back and not go out and produce the stats that I needed to. My next game was against Alabama. They had Chris Samuel, whatever, and they said he didn't give up a sack in 2 years. I was like, how is that possible? I had 3 sacks in that game. So, I mean, those type of things, you don't get so caught up into the stats or what people say. I just go out there and play my game. I try not to listen to a lot about what people were saying from the outside. Don't get so caught up in the media and things like that, because that would throw you off your game right off the bat. And my other game I had against you guys just mentioned, was the Arkansas game. Now that's one game that I went in, and if I had to say one of my better games of the whole year would have been that Arkansas game. And I was in there throwing running backs up into the quarterback. I mean, you need to watch the whole film of that Arkansas game, not just the highlights of what they put out there, because they're missing a lot of stuff that I did in that game.
So being able to, you ended up playing DN after coming in as a safety, or really as a dog safety, which is kind of a hybrid. Do you think, were you able to maintain your speed moving from that position down, putting your hand in the ground, to what the fact where it kind of enabled you to be kind of you ended up with 12 sacks on that season? Do you think?
Well, one thing I didn't do, I never put my hand in the ground unless it was like on a punt team or something like that. I was always up in a 2-point stance. Mm-hmm. And that's the way Coach Dunn allowed me to play. Now, he told other players who was in the position to get down and put their hand in the dirt. Me, I've always played in a 2-point stance. And that's where I was most comfortable at. And we had Big Greer on the team that year. And he used to sit there. He was a down lineman, Robert Greer. And he used to sit there and do some swim moves with his hand and try to do the footwork. I was like, man, that would work perfect for what I do, because I was always out. I got to add a little something extra instead of that bull rush on a player. So if I sit there and I did the bull rush 10 times out in a game, they're going to sit there and stop me eventually. I'm not going to get to the quarterback. So I went and started adding juke moves in my swim moves And at the same time, and instead, I would set a fullback up for a bull rush and hit him with the juke move, and they missed me all the way around. I mean, I was getting to the quarterback so easy. And, unorthodox, I would go in the wrong gap and get back into my right gap before the quarterback could make a move. And that's the way I played the game. It was just way different from the way everybody else played. And Coach Dunn, as long as I was getting it done, he was quiet. But
did you draw a lot of similarities with Greg? Because I know Greg, we've talked with him previously. He talked about how I think he came into Mississippi State like as a quarterback or something like this. So.
Yeah, he came as a quarterback.
So did y'all kind of talk about that a lot, how both of y'all kind of moved around and, in a sense, seemed like both of you ended up in kind of a hybrid position?
See, the good thing about what was going on with what we did under Jolie Dunn's program, if you can get in his system, and his number one thing was hustle. Hustle, always getting to that ball, and that's what I did. I wouldn't say I so much patterned behind what Greg did, but at the same time, I still added that whole greatness to that position at the same time, where it didn't really miss a beat. Because if Greg Favors was there doing his thing when he left, I stepped in and continued to do what, he was doing. Creating sacks, making plays, understanding. And one thing you got to understand, you can't just know your position on that football field. You got to know what the people are doing on the outside of you, on both sides and behind you. Because if you don't understand that, then something happened, all kind of stuff can happen. That's a quick touchdown. So there was times where maybe the DB didn't get out on the corner quick enough or whatever. I ran out there, whatever, and I stood there until the DB came in and rushed back into my position. So that's the good thing about, me coming in as a DB. I did understand, the concept of how to cover a receiver or a running back and things like that. So being able to do that, offered me so much more to a team. What it could have done for Greg Favors and him becoming there as a quarterback, he understands, what is going on with receivers and quarterbacks, the way they're thinking of it. So those are good things that, you could bring to the game and in that position. So when my D lineman didn't get in position right, hey, step up, move, make sure they get down in position and all that. So understanding how to cut off that hot route. Man, it took me up until my third game in the season before I could cut that hot route out. I was always lined up in there too tight, creating a bigger gap, which is a disadvantage to for the strong safety when he comes to cover that number 2 receiver. And my thing was going out and splitting the difference. If I go out and that's all I had to do is split the difference. Man, in the South Carolina game, I almost had a pick 6. The first game I decided to do that in, and it would have been just crazy for me at that point.
So that was home.
Yeah, it was at home. Man, it was love there.
All right, so let's talk about your relationship with Coach Jolie Dunn as that season progressed. I mean, of course, you were wreaking havoc in the defense. So did he just kind of let you just like run amok? Like, I don't care where you go, just make a play.
Well, you find these things out at the end of your career in positions like that. One thing Coach Dunn said to me, reporters come up to you, ask him a question. How are you going to replace Ed Smith? He was like, you can't replace Ed Smith. And that's saying that said a lot for Coach Dunn to say that, because he's not big on commending you on what you did on the football field. Coach Sherrill will come to me and say, hey, you number 2 or whatever. When I got SEC Player of the Week the first week, I didn't know. Everybody, Coach Sherrill came up and tapped me on my foot. It was like, hey, congratulations on getting all SEC Player of the Week. And next thing I know, everybody on the whole team came out, shaking my hand and all this stuff, which I didn't really understand a lot about what that meant until, I started reading up on it. They only gave it to so many guys per week, in the game, offensive guy and defensive guy. So Jolie Dunn never came out and it's like, hey, Ed Smith, you're doing really good. He never said that. But one thing I noticed about him, I mean, my name, I swear my name was the only name Coach Dunn knew on that field, because when things went wrong, Ed Smith, he made curse words up, things I've never heard before. What the shit? What are you doing? I'm like, what? I mean, Coach, what is that? What did you just say? So I'll go and I'll make a mistake in the game, and we'll be waiting for the call, because Coach Dunn called the signals from the sideline. So everybody, we turn around, we get it. We don't huddle up all that much during that time. And he called the signal from the sideline, and I had my back turned because I knew I just messed up. So obviously, I'm sitting there wondering why nobody's getting the call in. Coach Dunn, he sit there and hold the call long enough for me to turn around just so he could shake his head at me, and then he'll call the play. So Coach Dunn, man, it was a great coach to play for. I had a lovely time when I was being recruited by Mississippi State. He came out to San Diego, California twice when we came out. So I think they came out a total of 3 times to visit with me. Coach Sherrill came out, I think twice. Melvin Smith came out. Coach Dunn came out. But they came out a total of three times to meet with me out in San Diego, California, and talk to me and all that good stuff. Which I'm sitting there, and then they also went to South Carolina to meet with my mom in South Carolina to make sure at her Hardee's and talk to her about what was going on because where I come from, man, we weren't too hip with what's all of this stuff. This is all brand new. So, which I thought was a lot of respect, for them to take the initiative to go and speak to my mom about this whole situation and all and what was going on. And then that was one thing you tell him, hey, he's going to get an education. He's going to be taken care of while he's down there, and you wouldn't have to worry about it. He's making a great decision. And so I would love for my mom to have been more, a part of what was going on, but we were just in 2 different places at the same time.
Right.
So, all right. Let's talk a little just straight up football for a minute. Just thinking about your relationship with Jolie Dunn and just particularly that dog defense. Obviously, Bulldog fans remember that fondly as a defense, mid 90s to early 2000s. I mean, that was our defense, and we were one of the top defenses in the nation. And one year, I think maybe even top 5. But, since Jolie Dunn ended up going to Memphis, obviously, and then, really since then, we hadn't seen a team really run a true dog defense of that style. We've seen variations. Even now, Mississippi State, they're prepared to run a 3-3-5 kind of with a hybrid like safety, but nothing like dog safeties, and particularly with that defense where the corners were always pretty much in man. I can't remember ever a time when that wasn't the case. So I guess the question I have is why don't you think more teams run a form of the dog defense? I mean, you have some variation with a lot of teams in nickel because a lot of teams are in spread nowadays. But why don't you think you don't see as any dog defenses nowadays?
Well, I think you don't see a lot of it. Everything's going to repeat itself eventually at some point.
Mm-hmm.
What tend to happen is when you go out and you do these coaching clinics and teams start you coaching, and that's one thing about it. You do coaching clinics to whatever to try to make a little bit more money. Teams pick up on what you're doing. They figure out what you're doing. Now, if you have a defense in place or whatever, there's an offensive coach out there doing the same thing. How are we going to beat this? So what happens eventually, all of that stuff tend to burn out. Somebody else pick it up. They either run it better than we run it, or they just figure it out. So they're going to have to be a little bit more. You just can't stick to the same thing every time. Just like the spread offense came in. I think Kentucky was probably running more of that back when we played in '98 than anybody.
We're about to run that again.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So it's going to come back full circle. Now, that may be a thing where, where teams are defensive mind coaches or offensive mind coaches are not thinking about that Jolie Dunn defense for that to come back into play. Now, if you really want to think about something now, not just so much as Jolie Dunn defense, Jolie Dunn really could have gotten really a lot of credit for that hybrid DN linebacker, outside linebacker deal at that time. So you really could give him a lot of that credit because that's really when that hybrid really started coming in. And now everybody started going with a lot of that hybrid defensive end now.
Yeah, I know. I guess what you always see. I didn't mean to cut y'all, Derek. And I kind of get into when we start talking football.
Jay.
Talking football. But that because you would see either the 3-3-5 or more of a 5-1-5 kind of style of defense, but that is kind of like that hybrid where you can kind of shift into one or the other. I know we had Connor Stevens and then Mario Hagan, all of them kind of fill that role. So I kind of see what you're talking about, saying that hybrid of that particular. But at that time, people really didn't look at it that way. They would just be classified as linebacker, not that they were doing both.
Well, they probably didn't know what it was at the time. And it probably took a couple of years before that to really jump into gear and start using that name. because if you think about it, the word hybrid really start coming out or whatever when you start, you start seeing a lot more hybrid with cars and stuff. The dual engines and all that with part electric, part gas and things like that. And it's basically the same thing. So it's kind of like a trendy thing that goes on. Eventually, there's something else gonna come into play where it's all gonna, even out. So, but like you said, it's coming back around, full swing. If somebody coming back out with that defense that Jolie Dunn ran, Jolie Dunn ran back then. I think that could be a huge success.
Well, the only difference is they're probably not gonna blitz like Jolie Dunn blitz, because that defense was so exciting. We haven't had a defense, even though we've had a number one defense, it still didn't match the havoc that y'all created.
I tend to disagree, but
let me tell you this. In '98, we were ranked we were close. We were in the top 5 in defense in the nation in '98. We were always considered an undersized defense.
Yeah,
because
Ken Kwan was like 250 pounds.
Exactly. We were underrated defense or whatever. We were small, but we were fast. Nothing could make up for the speed that we put out on that field in '98.
Well, I think the thing is with the dog defense too. A lot of these teams run those 4-2-5s or 3-3-5 nickel defense, but that's obviously just responding to the times. Everybody's throwing the ball now. And
so you know all of these defenses you're calling out right now, right? Jolie Dunn had one base defense that we ran out of, and that was the 52. So what he would do or whatever, I know we ran a lot of 33 and all that stuff, or maybe some, and 51. And that's basically moving guys around and moving them in different places. I don't know if you remember back when we played Kentucky in '97. And they had Jared Lorenzen, he was at quarterback, and every one of our defensive players
the hefty lefty.
Huh?
The hefty lefty.
Exactly. Every one of our defensive players was standing up in that field. And we stood all of those defensive linemen up and moved them back off the line, and you had 2 linebackers on the line. They had to call a timeout because he didn't know what to do on that. He'd never seen that before. So that's the thing that Coach Dunn brought to this game. A lot of confusion to what was going on, and, they had to figure it out. So go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I thought Jared Lorenzen came about after Tim Couch.
No. Jared Lorenzen was before Tim. No. Yeah, no, he was before Tim Couch. Yeah, you're right. Because in '98, I played against Tim Couch.
Huh.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know why I thought he came after him. I guess I got.
That's right. No, I remember. Yeah, I remember that big quarter. Yeah, that was right. He came before Tim Couch.
Okay. I was like,
do I need to check my history now?
No, you're good. No, I was just I was trying to remember that. I guess I got it mixed up on those two.
Yeah, I remember Jared Lorenzen coming in and playing in '97, and then Tim Couch came in and did what he did in '98 till whenever he got finished. So.
Yeah, that's interesting. I guess that spread. And I guess you're talking about like how y'all was playing that in '98 with Tim Couch. I remember I went to a football camp there around that time. That was kind of a new thing. Just people doing. Well, I guess the air raid wasn't new. It's just probably updated. It seems like it catches on and it always fizzles out. But now it does seem like if Leach is able to do it in the SEC on a higher level. I mean, Kentucky was okay while he was there, but they weren't, a dominant team. But if he can win big, I'll be interested to see if some teams will go back to the air raid, not just because really the spread option isn't really a throwing offense; it's a running offense.
And that's what you're looking at. And
got a fact check. We were both wrong. He was right after Couch.
Say again.
So he was right after Couch, but I thought I could have sworn Lorenzen was before Couch too.
I thought he was.
He was 2003.
Who was?
Lorenzen.
2003?
Yeah.
So Couch was when?
Couch was the quarterback in '99. So let's see, pull this up.
I would imagine he'd been the quarterback in '98 as well.
Yeah, he was the quarterback in '98. Couch was. I know. Hey, I'm sorry, I was wrong on that. So,
Oh no, it's no big thing. I was like, I remember him coming out there.
Hey, that's what Google's our friend for. I could have sworn he before Couch too, but I remember the hefty left. I mean, you couldn't miss him. He looked,
out
biggest
in the
quarterback you
podcast
would ever
world, I'm
see.
sorry. Yeah, right. Podcast world, I'm sorry.
No, I think.
So
go ahead, Derek.
Let's talk about that run to the SEC. You blazed. I mean, y'all started out 3-0 in the SEC. You know what I'm saying? Then you had those 2 losses to Kentucky and LSU. Let's talk about how y'all bounced back, to get back on track to kind of, position yourselves to win the West.
Man, this was a season where we came in. The year before we beat Alabama, we beat Auburn. Obviously, we were playing those years where we were getting coaches fired at the time. You had Terry Bowden at Auburn in '97. You had Stallings. Was it Stallings in Alabama in '97?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
He was still there.
So these were teams that we were playing and going in and just carried over from the next to the next year, because we had Eric Brown, we had Greg Favors, our team defense was really loaded and coming in, and we just had to go and make some adjustments and doing. I mean, really, the coaches didn't know what I was going to be able to do out in the field or whatever, but they put me out there, I guess, to go ahead and check the water. And basically it turned out that I fit right in with what was going on with that scheme. And, you had Ashley Cooper on the other side over there, Dawgs, and Tim Nelson, Robert Bean. I mean, we just had a team where everybody came in, and those puzzle pieces was they were exactly, you're right, playmakers. And if they were holding it down over there, and definitely me, if I'm out on that field, man, I'm about to have some fun too. I'm not about to sit over there and take up a space on the field, not do anything. So I went out and did what I needed to do, and all these other guys, we all came together and gelled and played as a team. Let the media talk. And I was always big on playing as the underdog. I love doing that, because now we have something to go back and then show and prove to everybody else around the country that you coming down here to the South, we can play too.
Right.
Or coming down here to Mississippi State, we can play too.
So I got some film, talk about this play here. There you go, walking up in the gap. And you call, that's a fumble sack.
Right.
Y'all shut Vandy, man. And y'all shut Vandy out.
Yeah, we shut him. We went out that game, man. We got to think, man. We went out that year. We went into 2 days. We went through Jolie Dunn Packer Day, the 15 minutes on graduation on the last day of straight up downs for 15 straight minutes. When we left that field, there was holes in that field, probably enough to cover the top of your shoes. Every one of them was saturated with water. And when we got finished that year, man, that night we went on to that party on the yard. And, we're not too proud of it these days, man. There was a big fight that took place between the Kappas and the football team that night. And
y'all got to fight with some Kappas, really?
man, we were on the yard, man. It was a huge fight on that yard that night. They had the big block party at Mississippi State that night. And
I'm just thinking y'all was fighting Kappas. That's how.
What's wrong? Kappas are men too.
Hey, but hold up, though. You know why that fight took place, right?
No, we don't. Tell us.
Man, those guys were, I guess they were competing over the same girls and all this. And one night they were at the block party, and the Capitals was out doing their little line dance and all, walking all this. And we had some new freshmen on the team that year. They didn't know much about it, So they go out and they start doing what the Kappas did. The Kappas didn't like that. They pushed them.
I'm still. Why did you?
Uh-oh. He got muted.
They didn't like it. And all I seen was our players fight. So I had to go with the home team. So.
Yes, indeed.
I'm still stuck on the whole fight with Kappa's part.
I mean,
Well, hey,
Kappa's a man too. I mean,
I'm
Kappa
gonna
can
stop.
fight.
I got friends that are Kappas. I don't want to clown Puzzle.
So this next clip is against Kentucky, pass rushing,
yeah.
and you caused that interception, and that is Ashley Cooper returning. And another one of my favorite Bulldogs, Kevin Sluter. I mean, like Kevin Sluter was a real. He was one of those defensive linemen. He wasn't gonna have the tight games you had, but he was very dependable.
Right. Well, Kevin Sluter, I'll tell you one thing about Kevin Sluter. Kevin Sluter was a down lineman. That guy was fast. Man, that guy was fast. And, you know, he get out on that field. Kevin Sluter, man, he played beside me. Then was Kenwan Smith up in the middle at nose guard. And, you know, it was just it was just a great fit for everybody on that side of the field that year.
Right. Now here's that Bama film. And this is you combining on the sack. And Andrew Zhao, I mean, like, that guy, I hated Zhao. I'm glad that you flattened him on that play. You know, it looked like he didn't want to get up after that hit.
Yeah, he was hurt in that game, man. His shoulder, he was holding his shoulder in that play there. But, you know, he came, I mean, he took some torture from me that night, man, that day.
All right, and this game here is going to be one of probably your favorite games you remember.
Was that Arkansas?
That's Arkansas. That's you just destroying the quarterback. And you can tell how, you know, this film is, you know, the color is old ACC Jefferson Pilot Sports, man. I used to look forward to that.
That's us old right there, man. You were lucky if you could have gotten a clear picture of the whole game in that Jefferson Pilot. So.
All right, so that's the sack, and then you know you actually had back-to-back sacks on this drive. Even though Abernathy was holding you, you straight beat him.
Right. And that's again where I say unorthodox, going inside the gap where I wasn't supposed to be going. Man, that would have been a crazy play if Sterner had took off on the outside when I was going inside, where I had to basically get back out and make that play right. So I mean, it was nothing but ground for him to run right on that play.
Basically, I'm pretty sure Clint Stoner you probably gave him nightmares. He probably saw you in his dreams for a while.
Right.
I have a quick question.
Well, you know, that year against Arkansas, at that point, before they played us, they only given up 5 sacks that whole year. And we had 7 sacks in that game, and 3 of them went to you know who.
So I have a quick question. Since you kind of was like in a hybrid position, what would those calls sound like coming from the sideline? Considering they moved you around so much, would you know what position to be on the defense according to the call? How would some of those calls sound like coming in from Coach Dunn?
Well, it depends because it depends on the coverage that he call out, and it also depends on if it was a lion or a ram or a lion. If it was a ram, obviously you know I'm going. If it was a lion, I'm backing off. Carnell Menifee, he was on the blitz. I'm backing off. I'm in coverage. So you know, he played the opposite of my position. So now if he called a ram, I'm going. Only time I break off of my blitz at that point is if the running back came across my face, or that's where I'm going wherever he went.
Does it tell you which gap you were going through, or was it kind of one of the things?
I automatically know what gap I'm going through. So now it's a time where you don't give it away right off the bat. A lot of guys go and stand up in the gap. Me, I back off, I stem around, make it look like that I'm coming for a minute, then I back out of the gap, and then I take off. Now, you got to understand how every quarterback snap count is going to be different. So you got to get that snap count down or whatever. So if somebody go a hut or whatever, if they go hut, now there's so many different keys you can pick up on the field where you're going to tell what's going to happen in the game. I can look at a tackle and tell he's going to tell me what I'm going to be doing.
Right,
okay.
Right.
If he's looking down hard on the inside, that means he's about to block straight down the field, and I'm down. So I'm squeezing right where he leaves from. I'm squeezing all the way down to the center, and that was the reason why I was able to make tackles from my defensive defensive position on the running back before he crossed the line of scrimmage. So
now in this play here, you scrape across the field and you keep Kevin Falk from,
oh yeah,
making a long game. So I guess from your position, you were able to scrape across the field and stop runs like that.
Yeah, exactly. When that ball goes away, you have that opportunity to do it, especially when you know the running back has committed with the football. Now, if the quarterback still has the football in his hand, there was no way I would have scraped across that field because there's always a potential for a throwback or something like that coming back across the field.
All right.
So,
go ahead, Jay. You had something?
Oh, well, I guess I got kind of crossed up on the question I was about to ask. Well, most time you were either kind of like, you said it was some plays where you were in line, either you would kind of sit back and be in coverage, and another one where you would go. Were there any calls where they kind of had you in delayed blitzes, or was it a lot of times just straight go or sit back in coverage?
We had times where we could play around. We could run a twist or something like that on certain games that we played in, especially if they were heavily blocking me or double teaming me in games like we played in Oklahoma. They came with a game plan. They were doubling, sometimes tripling me, and also in the Tennessee game, in the SEC championship game we played in.
I know they was holding you because I was cutting up.
God.
Like, ref, with a flag.
Yeah, yeah. We got no calls in that game. We actually going to win that game that night.
Y'all should have won that game. Yeah. I can't watch it.
Yeah. But you understood what the SEC had going on that year. So
we're going to fast forward to the Cotton Bowl. And here is you taking out Ricky Williams, the Heisman Trophy winner. Now, we lost that game, but you lit Ricky Williams up. How did that feel just to take him out?
That was a great feeling because at that point in that game, which was very early in the game, at that point in the game, they gave us a glimmer of hope. And he played with us all the way up into halftime. This guy goes in at halftime, changes uniforms, came out and got clean, and never got dirty again. Ricky Williams was a true deal. Quick story on Ricky Williams. He's from San Diego, California too, and I played ball there. He was across town at Patrick Henry High School. I played against him in high school as well. So there you have it.
Were you
for
surprised?
the 2 years that he played us or whatever, it was 260 plus each game. So
were you surprised when Ricky Williams kind of got into his pro career and a lot of the weirdness ended up happening with him?
No, I wasn't surprised. Actually, I was more surprised on, man, I can't believe he did this and all that. But hey, it is what it is. So you can't knock him for it because actually for what he went against in the NFL at the time, he's making millions of dollars off of it right now. So he owns marijuana stores, right? So
I think I might have heard something about it. It seems like he's kind of just a different type of cat. That's in a generation.
It was different for him to go that way, but now he's making money on it. Maybe he's seen something before the NFL did it, and now look at it now. If he was playing this year right now, he would not have been suspended for smoking weed because it's legal now in the NFL.
I mean, Mekhi Becton got flagged for a failed test. He was still a top pick, and didn't hurt him at all.
Well, look at Josh Gordon. Josh Gordon probably the biggest case of that, though. I mean,
So let's go backwards a little bit, and let's look at this moment here. There's a unbittered Ed Smith.
During these times right here, man, this is when the end is starting to set in. So we better go ahead and have fun right now as seniors on this football team, because after this game right here, we only had one more game together to play. So that's where it really starts setting in, and the realization started to set and say, hey, dude, this is it. These are my brothers here.
Right, and that game, that Egg Bowl win, clinched the SEC West, and a trip to Atlanta,
Con-
where we should have beaten
Texas. No,
Tennessee.
Tennessee. I'm sorry. Yeah,
So where we
we
should have
should
beat
have
Tennessee.
we
I
should
mean,
have beaten them, and you know, hey, it just wasn't meant for us at that time. Now that year, if we had beaten Tennessee that night, we would have gone to the Sugar Bowl
Wow.
down in
was,
down
was
in New
that the
Orleans.
net? But was that the national championship game that year, or was
No,
just
that wasn't. That was Tennessee's. If they had won if they had lost that game that night, they weren't going to the national championship.
okay?
But they played Florida State in the championship game that year.
Okay. So now let's look at your senior season, man. I mean, like you said, you got ACC Player of the Week first week. I think you won it 2 weeks that year. Your final stat line: 127 total tackles,
Second in
12
the SEC
sacks,
that year.
yeah, which is still tied for fourth in the single season in sacks. You also earned first team All SEC as a defensive end, but you played linebacker, defensive end. You probably played a little safety, probably so. So let's talk about just like you said, kissing that Egg Bowl trophy and just looking back at your senior year. You know, what do you most remember about the time with your brothers?
Man, I'll sit back, man, and one of the biggest things that we had this year was a reunion for the 1998 football team. This year against the Ole Miss football, I went down and having all those guys come back and being in that room. There was a lot of them weren't there. I wish, we have players like Bert Keys, Kevin Cooper. All of these guys,
88.
man, you just
I remember 88.
it was a huge thing because not some Albert McKinley, John Hilliard, all these guys, man.
97,
Where we come
98.
is if you take it away from the football team, we were brothers on the football team on that field, but when you take it away from the football and bringing us together as a unit, was in the locker rooms or on the bus where there's nothing but endless jokes in Perry in the cafeteria. Endless jokes, man, of these guys. At that point in that year when I finished my season, I was ready to leave. But you're looking at 20 years later, man, I'm like, man, I would just love to be in a room with these guys one more time, all together.
Right.
Just sitting back laughing and all that stuff, man. That was more fun that we had. It was just endless, man. You get tired of that stuff, man. But
how do you
it was
think
so much
social
fun.
media, how do you feel social media would have impacted all those endless
Oh
jokes?
my God, man. Social media would eat us up. Man, we probably could have made money off social media with all the jokes and things that we did back then.
Especially with the NCAA getting ready to let y'all make money off name, likeness, and what is it? Name, likeness. What is it, Jeremiah? NLI, I think.
Something like that.
I forgot the I. Name, likeness, and image. Yeah. So
and it would have been a great thing, man. That's a double-edged sword we're talking about when you talk social media, because it can be a good thing for an instant, but it's also a bad thing for a lot of people, because social media
oh my
seen
God.
a lot of stuff that we did back then, man. We would be that would be horrible. So.
Well, I think a lot of us, I'm only 35, and I remember Facebook was just coming along when I just got in college. So I look back on some stuff I might have posted back in 07 and 08, and I'm like, man, I'm glad it wasn't the social media era yet. It's kind of.
So, back then.
I was just getting in. I was just getting in college, like, 98, 99. The social media back then was College Club. You know what I'm saying? It's nothing compared to what we got now.
You dealt with MySpace back then, or
MySpace.
Yeah, right. So right now, you bringing all the stuff that they have in right now. I mean, if there was a TikTok back then, Man, we'll be killing with TikToks. We'll be killing with TikToks.
So do you think how much money y'all think y'all could have made? I guess we kind of breezed past it when you brought it up, the creation of the Dog Pound Rock. So you can't say you was part of the defense and I would guess, of course, the defensive player came up with the Dog Pound Rock. So,
you know, if at that time when Kentucky Jones came up, the creation of the Dog Pound Rock, if he had put a patent on the Dog Pound Rock at that time, Kentucky Jones could have been a millionaire time and time over. You know how many times we've heard high schools on the West Coast, JUCOs on the West Coast, all over the country was doing the Dog Pound Rock. I mean, that kid could have made millions of dollars off of the Dog Pound Rock alone.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that was a big deal back then. It got so bad where the SEC had to come in and ban us from doing it because they thought it gave us extra. I mean, they just gave us extra hype. The SEC come in and they banned it. Doing something. Yeah, they banned it. So that's how bad. That's how strong and powerful the Dog Pound Rock was back then. They pulled it from the field to make them do it on the sideline. They still to this day do it on the sideline right now. That's how Kentucky Jones could have been a millionaire time and time again.
Well, it went away for a couple of years on the Chrome, and then Mullen smartly brought it back. So,
and that was probably the better thing to do.
I mean, and think Mullen not even really a Mississippi guy like that from that area and from here, and didn't think to bring back the Dog Pound Rock. And I guess it remains to be seen if Leach is going to do the same. He don't strike me as a Dog Pound Rock type of guy, but hopefully he thinks to do that. Maybe we need to mention it to him.
Another thing that I commend Mullins did, and one thing he did every year he was there was bringing back the former players. Setting up a tent for the former players, not just for the alumni, but the former players had a tent out that was set up there. We had the option to come back, and every year he was doing a breakfast, a brunch for everybody during tour from the spring games. So every year he was doing that and bringing players back. We'll come in, and I used to bring a group of kids with me every time just so they could have an experience of what's going on there.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's the first time I've heard that because, you know, I've heard rumors that Mullen really kind of stuck close to the vest with his guys. So, hearing this about him, I mean, he did embrace the past.
Yeah.
And that's great to know that because, of course we're outsiders. You've been on the inside, you would know that. So, it's good to know that about him to where, you got a chance to experience that with him. To where some people have said that they didn't care much for him as a person, but he was a hell of a football coach. He took us to where we haven't been.
That's funny how, when you behind the scenes, you see things a lot differently from the way everybody else see it. Mm-hmm. And I can understand why Mayweather, he is a show off on what he does. But at the same time, a lot of people are mad because he has so much money and he brags about it. I mean, he earned it. But, at the same time, with Coach Cheryl was down there, they didn't like him like that because they felt that he wasn't a people person. So you really can't, look at what outsiders do. Man, he can't please everybody. He can't please everybody. And it's just like, there's a way and a way that somebody likes something one way and somebody likes something another way. So, but just as many people that probably didn't like him, you had a lot, probably 2 or 3 times more people that actually liked him. So you can't, I never view things that way because I understand how it is on that side.
So, like, with one of bringing back the old players and then Kroom coming after Cheryl, I mean, did Kroom do that?
Kroom was a different type of coach, I thought, especially the way he disciplined players. Certain things was allowed in the program where, other things were allowed in other programs. I mean, I really don't like speaking on the difference on the coaches and all that. But, it's just a different disciplinary style. So, yeah.
Okay.
So
Go ahead, Jay.
I guess we're kind of getting into it's not getting too deep into, like you said, getting into or criticizing the coach or different styles, anything of that nature. But obviously we have Mike Leach as our coach for a reason right now. I mean, I can't remember too many times Mississippi State history a coach has been fired after 2 years. Matter of fact, I can't think of too many coaches that's been straight fired in that way.
Undefeated against Ole Miss too.
But as a former player, how did you look at it looking back, seeing, we just had a draft special and we talked about Willie Gay, and there was a big fight situation when at the Music City Bowl. So as a former player looking back, watching all this transpire, you have a fight and then you have all the drama. It was almost we regarded as almost like a love and hip hop show. The whole carousal with Joe Moorhead, whether to fire him, all of that. As a former player, how do you look at stuff like that when you see it from afar? Well, you're on the inside. How do you look at things like that?
When you look at this one coach that I will speak on, I spoke on him all year long, and I didn't hold back anything when I spoke on it. Number one, what I think really ruined our season, we could have been a lot better football team than the numbers showed, stat-wise, our record showed, than we would have been if you came into a program and asked and coached a team that you didn't know the way you needed to with the team that you had to deal with at the time. You do not bring a player in and play a player in a program who has never proven anything in a program that you have coached in the past. If he didn't play for you at another school that you played for or coached at, then why would you bring him in the toughest conference in the SEC and toughest conference in college football and play him here in the SEC? Starting him over the guys that was already in a program that understood the program. You got to work with what you have right there and build on what you have, regardless of the fact there was no way that kid should have beaten out KT for no position on that field at the time. If KT was hurt, you let him go out and prove that he could play. If he didn't play up to the standards or whatever, then you put that player in or whatever. But you don't go in from the beginning or whatever. This kid know nothing about the South or whatever, and this is a different kind of football you play down here. Man, I'm sorry I speak. I mean, this is something
Speak your mind.
Coming from a player here in the South, and a player here in the South or whatever, and you cannot play a player that way. You don't neglect all your players here where you have the talent there. KT had already had experience in playing at Mississippi State. KT had already had experience playing in college football games. But when you have a player to come in or whatever that you hear nothing, he has no stats or whatever, he's starting over a kid who's been proven already. That's the reason why Moorhead's not in his position right now or whatever, and that's the reason why, because he did not know how to discipline the players he had on his team at the time or whatever. That's why the reason why things took place on the football team, and that's the reason why he's not in the position right now, because he didn't address that situation the way it needed to be addressed. And I'm not just talking about the KT situation.
How do you think, as a player that was on that team, how do you feel like the Willie Gay Harris Schrader thing should have been addressed? Because really it seemed like it wasn't.
I really can't say how I feel, because one, I'm gonna say this now. If it was my quarterback on the football team or anybody's football team, it would be always 100% behind the quarterback. That's my whole thought pattern. Now, when it wasn't 100% behind the quarterback, hey, I don't know what took place and what happened with that for that fight to take place and all that. How I will address it or whatever, I have to get a little bit more insight in it. But there was a lot of stuff that was hidden away from us, from the outside looking in, wasn't being shown, and we didn't hear anything about. Man, up until the game, we didn't know who the quarterback was going to be.
Mm-hmm.
So how can we really put something in on something like that or whatever, when it was always we didn't know who the quarterback was going to be, but me getting into this guy's mind and thinking how he's going to do it, why would you be doing this or whatever, and him not go ahead and let us know if Strader's going to start, I'm sorry, and all that. Strader was obviously the better quarterback. You don't play a quarterback if he's hurt. Put him up when the game's on the line. We should have won that Kansas State game. You playing a quarterback where he's sitting there, you see him throwing footballs or whatever, that's sailing over the quarterback, over the receiver's heads. You can't continue to go on with that, man. You got to pull these people out of the game and play the players that's going to be.
Yeah, you actually got muted. Mr. Smith, you still there?
Okay.
There you go. Well, let's look at the bowl game. Okay, we know Schrader was out for the bowl game, and Stevens
Yes.
started in the bowl game, and of course, we got walked down and lost that game. But KT played, but didn't play quarterback. So, what's your thoughts on that?
My
I mean, do
thoughts
you just
were
think
that,
Moorhead just
you
didn't
know,
have trust in KT to be his quarterback?
and my question would be right now, was KT hurt this season? Why would KT pull his why would KT put his name in the transfer portal if a coach come to me, if you know he was hurt already, and you telling KT that this quarterback is going to start over you, why would KT, knowing that he's hurt, go and put his name in the transfer portal?
It makes sense. It makes plenty sense.
It's obviously that Mr. Smith is feeling pretty passionate about.
And see, and Ricardo isn't here. He left, and he's missing the best part. You know, Ricardo, the guy who was on earlier, he is not a fan of Tommy Stevens. He is a KT supporter.
Yeah, right.
And
my thing, you guys probably just mentioned it or whatever, but I'm like, my question is, you got a quarterback at Missouri who's proven himself at Clemson, who wasn't even drafted at all. I know that wasn't the smartest thing for Bryant to do and all that, but he was a lot more proven than
definitely
Stevens were proven to get drafted in this NFL.
Well, just as a point of that clarity of truthfulness, I guess I was a Tommy Stevens supporter. And that was probably one of our bigger arguments early on in our podcast and throughout most of the season. And I agree with the move. I always told him I watched KT and I felt like I just didn't see it personally. Just evaluating him, I just didn't see it for him as a quarterback. I felt like he did show some things that he was proven as a guy that can get the job done. I think it was times when he played where the offense looked explosive, but I just don't think he was accurate enough. And I think really,
who are you speaking of right now? You speaking
KT,
Tommy Stevenson or KT?
KT, and I felt like he wasn't. I don't think he had enough of a body of work. I think he had some games. You know, I felt like he had an opportunity to take the job, even when Fitzgerald was the quarterback. And I felt like he just.
You would be saying this right here against me coming in after I wasn't really proven against in '97 behind Greg Favors until that first game I played. So we never know what KT could have done this past season if he was in the game to prove himself. But looking at me, you never known that I was going to lead the SEC in sacks going in '98 or whatever after seeing what I did in '97.
I will say though, if you're saying you had a JUCO body of work, well, essentially you would have been an All-American caliber player. I mean, JUCO, of course, it isn't the SEC, but at the same time, that shows that you have that body of work. Now, I can get why people think the Thomas Stevens move was controversial and it wasn't the right move, but I mean, I was enamored myself by his talent level and his ability. He turned out to be probably not the most durable guy, and he's going to have a chance in the NFL maybe to disprove what a lot of people have to say. But I don't necessarily
quarterback.
I think he will. You keep saying that about quarterback, but the skills are evident. Like you can't say that he doesn't have the requisite skills. That's not fair to say.
KT still has 2 years to play. I think was this a good year for him to use his red shirt right now? For him to go and to be able to do it with everything that's going on. If the NCAA doesn't change the rules on fifth-year seniors, that's an option for KT to take off and do that one of his last years. So
he has 2 more years left. So I think that's
transfer too.
Right.
So he should be eligible immediately.
Yeah.
Wherever he goes.
So if he's eligible immediately, then that means he got 2 years to play wherever.
I think he definitely got to find him a situation that scheme-wise fits him. But I mean, I think this, if he's ever a chip to be on somebody's shoulder, this is one. I think, just go and disprove Joe Moorhead and make him look like more of an idiot than people think he is.
We know he's not going to Oregon.
Well, let's put it like this here. Can y'all hear me?
Yeah. You still can.
Put it like this here. Joe Burrows, he did what he needed to do come and get 1 year to play at LSU and tore it up. So that's all it takes for 1 year.
Yeah,
So-
go ahead.
So let's kind of get back on track. After your senior season, what were some of your professional football, opportunities?
My professional football opportunities, man. Man, I'm gonna have to go to the restroom. I'm sorry, brother. Can we hold it? Can I
That's
put you on hold real quick?
We can pause it.
Yeah.
I'll be right.
All right, we're back. One more from the Dawgs Mouth with Mississippi State linebacker Ed Smith. And now we're talking about your life after Mississippi State. First team all SEC, led the ACC in sacks. What happened? What happened with your professional football aspirations after you left Mississippi State?
Man, after Mississippi State, after Mississippi State, man, everything happens for a reason, and I truly believe, it wasn't really meant for me, to make it play football in the SEC. I mean, in the NFL. So, I don't like blaming people for the outcomes of things. And up until this day, I haven't fully 100%. I probably put about a blame on somebody, probably about 5% of what took place after my after football at Mississippi State. Was I chose an agent who didn't have any experience on how to make the connection with the scouts and the NFL coaches, who was too fresh after getting certified for the NFL. And I had Greg Favors' agent came up to me right after the Cotton Bowl and was wanting to sit and talk to me about it, and I basically just blew him off. And it just, it was a deal that just wasn't, it just wasn't, it just wasn't for me.
So were you even, I know with your numbers, I mean, being in the SC hadn't yet evolved into the dominant conference per se yet, but premier conference at that time, 127 tackles, 12 sacks, those were pretty stellar numbers. First team all SEC, especially on the defensive side of football. So, like, what were you projected at that time as far as going to the league position and even maybe round or anything like that going into the NFL?
The Wobble Man don't want to give us 100% credit for being the best conference in all of football.
Oh no! I think it's the best conference. I'm saying at that time it wasn't yet. It wasn't yet considered the dominant conference. It has been the last 10, 15 years.
It was coming.
Well, let me get that question. Let me hear that question again. I'm sorry, I got off track.
Yeah. Oh, what I was saying is, I mean, obviously with your numbers and like 127 tackles, 12 sacks, those pretty. I mean, those are. I mean, in today's college football, you have most times you might hear a person having 12 sacks, never the combination. And then it seems like you're a guy that could do a multitude of things. So, what were you projected as far as going to the league? What position were they projecting you to play, and were you projected to go in early rounds, later rounds?
Man, I didn't even get a free agent trial. I didn't even get called as a free agent. No. From what I was hearing from coaches that I was close to was late first round, early second round, and I'm gonna have to push that back to the fact that I had an agent who didn't have the experience to market me the way I needed to be marketed. And that's basically what I could only put that back on. I still think even if you were a great player, it's easy to get lost in the mix of all of that, because you're looking at, you got the combine that came up, your name's not in it. You have all the senior bowls that came up, your name's not in it. And, it was just something in there where on draft day, with so many names being thrown around and coaches making sure they got the right picks and all of that, I mean, I think that's a thing too, because they're not going to sit back and remember, hey, you remember that kid, Ed Smith, or whatever, what happened to him? Because there was a lot of things I needed to do to get prepared for and get my name out in front of all the coaches and scouts at the time. So I think there was a whole lost cause on being marketable and just getting out there.
So with all that,
Turned on the film.
I mean, with all that, obviously, probably something that's a bit of a subject to you. So, how many years did it really take you, probably, to truly like get over it? As far as like, obviously, it seems like that would cause a little bitterness. How long did it take you to get over that?
Well, it took me to get over that. There was the time I had a daughter, my first child, and me coming from the family that I came from, and my mom, she worked really hard at raising 4 kids, and I wasn't about to be in a gap where I go and did so much outside of my family to the point that I'm neglecting my kids, and I can't do that. That's not, those kids didn't ask to be here. I have 2 daughters. I have 3 kids, 2 daughters and a son. One's in college, getting ready to start at University of Memphis now. I have a daughter that's going into the 11th grade in high school, and then I have a 5-year-old son who thinks he's me right now. So
yeah, send him
so,
on, get him right, get him on.
And that was my whole goal. Eventually, and that was one thing for me too. I could have chased football a little bit longer, but there was always something that didn't sit right with me. Me going put all this time into school, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna get my degree first before I go and try to pursue any of this other stuff. And that's what I did. Went back and got my degree. Made sure my degree was taken care of before I did it. One of the things I went to school for was to make my mom happy. I was the first person in my family to graduate from high school, first person in my entire family to graduate from college. So now we have, one that was wanting to be a lawyer that's in the family now. One's, going to be a nurse practitioner. And these are things that, the young people, young generation in the family see that you're doing. They understand that they can go and do this too. So not so much of making it in the NFL, is what I'm doing for other people to get this whole thing started, in the generation. Now, my family right now, my kids I have a daughter that's in college, in community college right now, that's getting ready to go into the University of Memphis. So this is my generation now. So these are kids that's coming up under me by me going out and leading by example, not so much to put my whole life in football, that at some point I realized that, hey, I need to go ahead and start focusing and taking care of my family and my kids and stuff. So that was important to me.
I'm assuming, I know you say your son wants to, be you. So is he already playing ball? So are your conversations probably a little different with him now, knowing that football, it isn't the all and be all, so to speak?
Well, my conversation with my son is, after football, after Mississippi State, after years and years, it took me a while before I really came up. I always knew I wanted to work with kids, and I've always known I wanted to own my own business. But being able to put those two together, I was able to do by owning Peak Performance Sports Training and Fitness, which I was able to go in and train kids from boys and girls from all ages, all the way from age of 4 all the way up to the pro level in sports and all. So one great thing that I had when my son was 2 weeks old was I used to spend a lot of time at my facility with me and watch from the stroller or the walker of me training other kids. And the day he learned how to crawl, he was pushing a sled. He came out pushing a sled. The day he learned how to walk, he went over and ran through the ladder drill. So these are things that, I used to tell my kids all the time, the mental reps are just as important as the physical reps. Always pay attention on the sideline, because you never know when you're going to get called into a game.
Hey, don't tell Coach Kiffin that. He might offer your son.
Right.
We need him. Hey, what's your son's name? Is he a junior?
Oh, he's a junior, but I call him Blaze.
Well, we need Blaze. Wear that number 2 on defense like his dad did.
Hey, but, and that was the number one thing. Hey, always pay attention. You never know. And that's one thing, man, when my son came out, he started pushing that sled, from him sitting in that stroller and walker, watching all these other kids do these same things and start running through the drill. This is what he remembered. And I about went crazy when he did that. And I couldn't tell enough people that how important the mental reps is just as important as the physical reps. Just because you sit there, you're doing it. If you sit back and you watch and think about things or whatever, ask questions before you go out and try to do it, you can be more 100% more prepared to do these things than you would if, you just went out and try to do it on your own. Always be a student to the game. No, always be open-minded to what's going on. Just because you know something doesn't mean you can't go and learn from somebody else to be better at what you're doing right now. Even if it's that person is younger than you are and they just start doing it. They make mistakes too. You learn from that stuff. They do stuff right or whatever. Just like social media wasn't back when we played football or whatever. What would have we done differently then than we would now with so much social media in place? So these are questions that you want to ask and be able to learn and teach from. The game, like you guys just asked about. I'm not going to put my son in football. Another thing you guys didn't know about me, I didn't start playing football until I was a freshman in high school. So it didn't take me that long to pick the game up or whatever and take it from the level where I was to learn what I needed to learn to take it to where I took it to. So I'm not going to put my son in football too early. I put him in flag football. He'll be in track. He'll be in soccer to understand the footworks and the kinetics of all this stuff and how it all works and be able to put it together. But, football is a passion of mine and all that. The way they teach these games now, man, it's kind of like playing volleyball now. You can't touch them. So, I didn't say it like that.
I can imagine. I can imagine getting a little excited as far as a dad. I think of a friend of mine. He actually played at Mississippi State too. A guy Cortez McCraney, and I know I was telling someone the other day how Cortez, his wife, she played basketball at Mississippi State. She's 6 foot. He's 6'2". So he was texting us one day that his son's in the top 5 percentiles, like top 5% or something for height. So he was all hyped because he's like, oh man, he's seeing stars.
and believe it or not, my son's mom is 5'10", and he's sitting tall. And I look at him against other 5-year-old kids. He's so much more taller than these kids are, and he's more physical. Like I looked at another 5-year-old man, who's never done the things that he's done. I was like, man, that's just a premature 5 there, and not just to try to pump my son up or anything, but if you understand sports and how, people should look and on what you're looking for, then you'll understand, where I'm coming from right now. He's just so much more physical. So, you just got to let kids, go out and move at their own pace instead of you forcing this on the kids. So
how long do you think you're going to be able to hold them out of football? So obviously you're going to have that natural aggression. So,
well, I think right now, I take him to football games and things like that, but basketball, football, and soccer and all that, I think the more he's with kids, and I think eventually, I say 6th grade or whatever, man, I may go out and get that edge or whatever. Like, hey, my boy can do this. So I may get that edge and move him towards it a little bit quicker. So I don't know. I just have to wait and see. So
has he seen any of your highlights?
You know what, man?
Like you say, he has that mental ability to repeat what he sees. So when he sees you out there,
do you guys have kids, man?
I have a daughter.
You guys have kids?
I don't have any kids yet.
Okay, here's how kids operate. If Michael Jordan's kids, LeBron James' kids, they would never look at their dad as if their favorite player wouldn't be their dad. Their favorite player is going to be somebody else on another team somewhere that they just absolutely love. And that's just the way kids are. You can't expect – my kids are never – I can never explain how I am and them take how I was on the football field than your daughter would understand how I played if I was telling that same story to your daughter. So it's just way different for your kids to pick that up. Now – my son, he probably looked back at some film or whatever, later on in life. He was like, hey, ain't know my dad was that good or whatever. But right now, it's like my daughters, I think my middle daughter is more of the one that's going to understand and take what I did in the past, as something that she can use for the rest of her life. My oldest daughter, she probably won't know part of it. So And that's nothing bad. It's just your kids.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, your kids will never see you that way. So.
well, Mr. Smith, we're glad that you were able to join us on this episode of From the Dog's Mouth. I mean, you've definitely given me because I figured you got hurt. You know what I'm saying? So you let me know what happened because I'm like, I always wonder what happened to my favorite defensive player, Mississippi State. Because I could have just would have loved to have you at my Chiefs because you would have been playing alongside Derek Thomas. You know.
Hey,
What
brother,
to
be honest with you, man, I was able to walk away from this game unscathed. I feel a lot more bumps and bruises right now when I get up off the couch than I did back then. I played the game at 128 pounds. I'm 280 pounds right now. You know, it's just a matter of, I mean, in my mind, I think I can get out and do it. But as I watch these kids on TV and whatever, as I get older, I realize that, hey, I can't do this shit no more, man. hey, that's one thing as we get older. Don't let your mind keep telling you and you getting you in trouble. It's kind of like you got your 5-year-old son out in that field and telling you, Dad, go get them boys because they just jumped on me. No, it ain't always like that.
No, man, I mean, I teach kids one day, and a lot of times what I do, I used to, well, even this year and all the time, I race my kids to recess. And I think it was a point last year, I think I ended up pulling a muscle running with them. I was like, oh, yeah, I forgot. I'm not exactly not spring chicken anymore.
That's one thing you get out there and try to do, whatever. You trying to play with these young kids and all, trying to act like you can still do these things, man. Hey, one thing, the toughest thing that you can do is go out and try to show off in front of these kids and hurt yourself and try to make it back in the house without them noticing you hurt.
Hey, check it. We had a snowball. We had snow here a couple of years back, and I sure felt it because I was used to being able to just do that. But like, I slipped and fell on the snow. It was over.
Man.
I was done for her, and she towed me up with the snowball. So I definitely understand. So
be like said the entertainer on Kings of Comedy. I damn near hurt my whole left side.
I know. I mean, because when I hit that snow, it was over.
Right.
So we want to thank you for joining us, man. And then whenever football season starts, we would definitely love to have you back. To
my
give
pleasure,
you
brother.
on the current season. Because what do you think about this offense we're gonna bring before we get out of here? I mean, we've never had an offense like this at Mississippi State to potentially throw 40 to 50 times a game.
We'll see, man.
Sound like that one.
I really wish we could take the politics out of the game right now because it's very, very detrimental to our players that's on the team and building a unit. They really need to stay away from the political side of it. If you are football-minded, stay football-minded. Don't get caught up on the other side of it. And that's one thing I can commend all of the other coaches for in the past is they left the political side where it needed to be and not be this keyboard monster or whatever. So
give me a Nick Saban who ain't never sent an email or a text message.
Say again?
Hey, Nick Saban has never sent an email or a text message.
Until now.
I don't know how he pulled that off.
Said his wife was doing it all.
I think the political side of it needs to stay away because it has no position in this sport right here. Especially when you have kids up who's able to think on their own. And we've lost one this year so far down to Florida State and all. We really need to focus on what we are focusing on to keep the kids together to build a unit. So
it seems like it's a podcast. We can't get past this tweet thing, man. but hey, say every interview, like, man, that tweet, man.
I think if you try to master what you can and leave everything else to everybody else, let them deliver you what you need to say, I think we'll be a lot better off.
Mm.
Yes, indeed.
It is what it is. So.
Well, Bulldog fans, we hope you've enjoyed this episode of From the Dog Mouth with Ed Smith. He was very candid. So, listen to it, check it out. Jeremiah, go ahead and close us out.
Oh, man, it was a great podcast. I just want to thank you, Mr. Smith, for coming on. This is around the time I was kind of becoming a Bulldog fan. My sister started going to school at State in '98, so it was kind of her first year on campus. But I didn't know as much because I was just becoming a State fan around that time. So he kind of enlightened me, and I was like, man, he kind of one of the first hybrids come through Mississippi State, and kind of one of those guys who I guess kind of helped bring about that dog defense that was so famous at Mississippi State. So I just want to thank you for coming on and kind of giving us really it was kind of enlightening your life story in the sense of like, you know, that experience going from college to pros, that things don't always shake out. And then, honestly, you've been able to make a way, even though you kind of had a disappointment. So I just want to thank you for coming on, telling your story on our show. And
well, you know, definitely, I noticed you guys called to talk to me, but I couldn't have done what I did at Mississippi State without the group of guys that I had around me.
mm-hmm.
Those guys were a huge part of our success down on the field. And, you know, at this point in my life, man, I look to encourage and then try to help as many young people as I can to move forward in their part. I mean, everybody that I've coached in the past would not be a professional sports player, but hopefully they will be professional and disciplined enough to finish out and carry out their story for the rest of their life. So that's what I look to do.
Yes, indeed.
All right. I guess as AJ say, well, I'm not gonna do the AJ thing.
Do a Jay Short thing, man.
I don't know, man. I think if anything, man, I just like to always end with a hell state, man. That's the best thing I think for all of us. Regardless if we're a Black Dawgs Sports Podcast with all, you know, what is Coach Chrome said, the only color matters around here is maroon. I think that's
right.
The best way to end this.
One love, all my brothers and sisters, black, white, brown, red, whatever you want it to be. When we're on that football field, we're all cheering for the same thing. That end goals win. That's what it's all about.
Right.
Okay. I appreciate everybody. Go Dogs.
All right. So maybe we can end it there. So maybe we can end it there on the color that matters around here. It's maroon.
It's maroon and white, baby. There you go.
Hell State.
All right.
Hey, you fellas have a good night, man. I appreciate you getting me on.
All right.
Thank you, sir. All right.